The moment my mother said those words, the entire table went silent. "Maybe you should go find another table," she said casually, cutting into her roast chicken like nothing had happened. "This is family dinner, family." The word hit harder than the insult, because everyone at that table knew what she meant. I wasn't really family. I was adopted. 26 years of life with them, and suddenly my seat at the table had become optional. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My younger brother Ethan stared down at his plate like he wished the mashed potatoes could swallow him whole. My aunt cleared her throat awkwardly. My father pretended to refill his wine glass. No one defended me. No one said a word. And that silence hurt more than my mother's voice. I slowly put my fork down. "You're serious?" I asked quietly. My mom shrugged, her pearl bracelet clinking softly against the plate. "Well," she said with a tight smile, "technically this dinner is for immediate family. Blood family." A few relatives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. My cousin Rachel whispered, "Aunt Linda," but my mother waved her off. "Oh, please," she said. "We all know Daniel was adopted. Let's stop pretending. Daniel, that's me. The boy they brought home when he was 3 years old. The boy who spent 18 years trying to be good enough for them. Apparently I never was." I stood up slowly, the chair scraping loudly across the hardwood floor. 20 pairs of eyes followed me. Some looked embarrassed. Some looked curious. But none looked angry on my behalf. And that told me everything. I smiled, not because I found it funny, but because something inside me had just snapped. "Sure," I said calmly. "I'll find another table." My mom nodded, satisfied, like she had just corrected a minor inconvenience. "Thank you," she said. I walked away from the dining room without another word. Behind me, the conversation slowly restarted. Plates clanked, laughter returned. Just like that, I was erased. The hallway felt colder than the dining room. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way my chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped invisible wires around my ribs. I walked slowly toward the front door. On the wall beside me hung dozens of framed photos. Family vacations, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. In every picture, there was a smiling family. And in almost every picture, there was me, standing slightly to the side. Never quite in the center, I paused in front of one photo. It was from Ethan's high school graduation. My parents stood proudly behind him, hands on his shoulders. I stood beside them smiling. But now, looking at the picture again, something felt different. I looked like a guest. Not a son, not a brother, just someone who happened to be there. A memory surfaced from years ago. I was 9. A kid at school had asked me why my skin tone looked different from my parents'. That night, I had asked my mother the same question. She sighed dramatically, like I had asked something annoying. "Because you're adopted," she said. Just like that. No emotion, no explanation, just a fact. After that, everything slowly changed. When Ethan got a new bike, I got a lecture about gratitude. When Ethan went to summer camp, I stayed home. When Ethan broke something, it was an accident. When I did, it was proof that adopted kids come with baggage. I spent years trying to prove them wrong. Straight A's. 2 part-time jobs in college. Never asking for help. Never complaining. Never causing problems. Because somewhere inside me, I believed that if I worked hard enough, if I behaved well enough, if I loved them enough, they would eventually love me the same way. Tonight proved something else. That day never came. The front door opened with a quiet click. Cold air rushed against my face. Outside, the driveway was dark except for the yellow glow spilling from the dining room windows. Through the glass, I could see shadows moving. The dinner had continued without me. I sat down on the front steps. For a long moment, I just stared at the ground. It wasn't the first time I'd felt unwanted in that house, but it was the first time they had said it out loud. Blood family. The words echoed in my head. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up. A message from earlier was still open. The sender's name made me smile slightly. Robert Hayes. I typed slowly. Everything just happened. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Then the reply came. Are you sure you're ready? I looked back toward the house. Inside were the people who had spent my entire life reminding me I didn't belong. I thought about the empty chair at the dinner table, the quiet stares, the one sentence that erased 26 years. I typed back, "Yes." Another message arrived seconds later. "Then we'll be there in 30 minutes. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The cold air suddenly felt refreshing. For the first time that night, I wasn't angry, I wasn't sad, I was calm. Because tonight wasn't the night my family rejected me. Tonight was the night they finally learned the truth. 30 minutes passed slowly. I could hear laughter from inside the house. Someone must have started dessert. Probably my mom's favorite apple pie. Funny how life continues normally for everyone else when yours just shattered. Headlights suddenly appeared at the end of the driveway. A black car rolled to a stop, then another. 3 people stepped out, all dressed in dark suits. The first was a tall, gray-haired man carrying a leather folder. The second was a woman with a laptop bag. The third was someone I knew my parents would immediately recognize, their lawyer. Robert Hayes walked up the path toward me. "Daniel," he said calmly. "You ready?" I nodded. "Yes." He studied my face for a moment. "No second thoughts?" I thought about the dining room again. My mother's voice. "Go find another table." I shook my head. "None." Robert gave a small approving nod. "Good," he said. "Then let's go introduce your family to their new reality." The front door opened again. This time I wasn't alone. Conversations inside stopped almost instantly. 20 heads turned. My mother looked annoyed first, then confused. "Oh," she said. "You came back." Her eyes shifted toward the people behind me. "And you brought—" "Guest?" My father frowned. "Daniel, what is this?" I stepped inside slowly. "I thought it might be better if we finished our conversation." My mother sighed. "Daniel, we're having dinner." "I know." I gestured toward the dining room. "Actually, I think this conversation should happen at the table." The same table she had just removed me from. Something in my voice made people uneasy. My father stood up. "What conversation?" Robert Hayes stepped forward politely. "Good evening," he said. "I'm Robert Hayes." My father's face changed immediately. Because he knew that name. Everyone in the room did. Robert Hayes wasn't just any lawyer. He handled some of the largest estates in the country. My mother looked confused. "Why is a lawyer here?" Robert adjusted his glasses. "I'm here regarding the estate of Margaret Caldwell." The name hit the room like thunder because Margaret Caldwell was famous. One of the richest women in the country. A billionaire who had died 2 months ago. My father blinked. "I'm sorry." "What does that have to do with us?" Robert opened the leather folder slowly. "It has everything to do with your son." My mother scoffed. "He's not our biological, yes," Robert said calmly. "We know." Then he turned toward me. "Mr. Caldwell." The room erupted in whispers. My mother frowned. "Caldwell?" Robert nodded. "Yes." Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "The sole heir to the Caldwell estate." The words hung in the air. For a moment, no one reacted, like their brains refused to process what they had just heard. Then my cousin Rachel gasped. My father sat down slowly. My mother stared at me like she had never seen me before. "That's impossible," she whispered. Robert calmly slid a document across the table. "Actually," he said quietly, "it's very real." My mother picked up the paper. Her hands started shaking. Then her wine glass slipped from her fingers. It shattered against the floor, and suddenly, the boy she told to find another table had just become the richest person in the room. The silence in the dining room felt heavier than the broken glass on the floor. No one moved. No one spoke. My mother's wine glass lay shattered beside the table. Dark red liquid slowly spreading across the hardwood floor like a stain that couldn't be cleaned, but no one looked at the mess. Everyone was staring at me, or more specifically, at the document in my mother's shaking hands. "Sole heir?" she whispered. Her voice sounded like someone had drained all the air from her lungs. The lawyer, Robert Hayes, nodded calmly. Yes. My father leaned forward slowly, both hands pressed against the table. There must be some mistake. There isn't, Robert replied. He slid another document out of a leather folder and placed it on the table with careful precision. This is the certified copy of the will. My cousin Rachel leaned closer to look. Then she gasped. Oh my God. My aunt immediately grabbed the paper from her. Her eyes widened. That number? Is that real? My mother looked down again. Her lips moved silently as she read. Then she looked up at me, really looked at me. For the first time in years, You knew about this? I folded my hands calmly in front of me. Yes. My father's voice became tight. Since when? 2 months ago. 2 months. 2 months of knowing my entire life was about to change. 2 months of deciding whether I should tell them. 2 months of wondering if they would finally see me differently. Tonight answered that question. And they answered it before I ever said a word. Blood family. Find another table. I leaned back in the chair slowly. The day Margaret Caldwell died, I continued quietly. Her lawyers contacted me. My mother's eyebrows pulled together. But why you? Robert Hayes spoke again. Because Daniel Caldwell is her grandson. The room erupted in confused whispers. Grandson? How? That can't be right. My father rubbed his temples like he had a sudden headache. Daniel's parents died in a car accident, he said. Yes, Robert replied. That is correct. My mother frowned. But they weren't rich. Robert closed the folder halfway. That's because Margaret Caldwell was not their mother. The table went silent again. She was their grandmother. My heart beat steadily as every eye turned back toward me. Robert continued calmly. Daniel's biological parents died when he was 3 years old. Margaret Caldwell was his last living relative. My aunt leaned forward. Then why didn't she raise him? Robert gave a small sigh. At the time, Mrs. Caldwell was 78 years old and in poor health. She believed she would not be able to care for a toddler properly. So she arranged an adoption. My mother looked stunned. Us. Robert nodded. Yes. My father spoke slowly. You're saying she chose us? Yes. For a very specific reason. My mother swallowed nervously. What reason? Robert looked at her carefully. She believed you were a kind family. The words hung in the air. Kind family. No one spoke. Not after what happened earlier tonight. My mother suddenly looked very uncomfortable. Well, she said awkwardly, we gave him a home. Robert nodded slightly. Yes, you did. Then he added quietly, and Mrs. Caldwell watched from a distance for many years. My stomach tightened slightly. Even though I already knew the story, hearing it again still felt strange. She had investigators check on Daniel's well-being, Robert continued. She wanted to make sure he was safe. My father's expression darkened. Investigators? Yes. My mother's voice became defensive. Well, I hope they told her we raised him. They did. And Robert paused. Then he said the sentence that changed the entire atmosphere of the room. They also told her how he was treated. The room went cold. My mother's face turned pale. What? What does that mean? Robert didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly pulled out another document. The will includes a personal message from Mrs. Caldwell. My mother suddenly leaned forward eagerly. A message? Hope flickered in her eyes. For the first time since the announcement, she seemed optimistic. Maybe she believed this was the part where everything would be fixed, where gratitude would be expressed, where reward would follow. After all, they raised the billionaire's grandson. Surely that was worth something. Robert opened the document. Would you like me to read it? My father nodded stiffly. Yes. Robert cleared his throat and began reading. To the family who adopted my grandson, my mother squeezed my father's hand. Her lips slowly curled into a hopeful smile. I thank you for giving him a home. My aunt nodded approvingly. That's nice. My cousin whispered, "See? She appreciated them." But Robert kept reading. However, the single word changed everything. My mother's smile slowly faded. I also know how he was treated growing up. The room froze. No one breathed. Robert continued calmly. "I know how often he was reminded that he was not truly yours." My father's jaw tightened. "I know how he was excluded." My aunt stared down at the table. "I know how he tried to earn love that should have been freely given." My chest tightened. Hearing someone say those things out loud felt strange. Like my childhood had suddenly become public record. My mother's face had gone completely white. Robert read the final line. "Because of this, I leave the Harper family exactly $1. The silence that followed was deafening. My father slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous." Robert calmly slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a check. $1.0. Oh, my cousin Rachel covered her mouth. "Oh my God." My mother looked like she might collapse. You're serious?" Robert nodded. "Very." My father pointed at me angrily. "You planned this." I raised an eyebrow. "Planned what?" "This humiliation." I shook my head slowly. "No." Then I looked directly at my mother. "You did that all by yourself." The words hit harder than shouting ever could. My mother looked away. Robert continued reading. "There is one final message." Everyone turned back toward him, to Daniel, my grandson. My heart pounded slightly. Even though I had already read the will, hearing it spoken aloud felt different. "You owe them nothing." My mother closed her eyes. "Live freely." Robert closed the document. "That concludes the will." No one spoke for several seconds. Then my father suddenly stood up. "Daniel," he said quickly, "you're upset. We understand that." His voice had completely changed. Gone was the cold distance. Now it sounded warm, friendly, almost desperate. "You're still part of this family." I tilted my head slightly. "Am I?" No one answered, because we all remembered the sentence from earlier. "Find another table." My mother stood up suddenly and walked toward me. Her voice cracked. "Daniel, sweetheart, sweetheart." Interesting. That word hadn't been used in years. We didn't mean what happened earlier. I looked at her quietly. "You didn't?" "No," she said quickly. "We were just joking." My cousin Rachel looked shocked. "Joking?" My mother ignored her. "You know how family dinners get," she continued nervously. I stared at her for a moment. Then I smiled slightly. "Mom." The words sounded strange in my mouth now. When someone tells you to leave the table, I paused. "That's usually not a joke." My father stepped closer. "Daniel, listen." His voice had become gentle. "We raised you." "Yes," I said. "We loved you." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you?" He hesitated. Just long enough. The room noticed. My aunt looked away. My cousin shifted uncomfortably. My younger brother Ethan finally spoke for the first time that night. "Daniel." I looked at him. He looked genuinely sad. "I'm sorry." 3 simple words, but they were the only honest ones spoken all evening. I nodded slightly. "Thank you." Then I stood up from the chair. The same chair I had once been told to leave. "I think," I said quietly, "I should go." My mother grabbed my arm. "Wait!" Her eyes were full of panic now. "Where will you go?" I glanced around the dining room. At the expensive furniture, the polished silverware, the family photos on the wall. Then I looked back at her. Somewhere with a bigger table, her grip loosened. I walked toward the front door. Behind me, the room stayed silent. The lawyer and his assistant quietly followed. Just before stepping outside, I heard my father call my name. "Daniel." I stopped but didn't turn around. His voice sounded small now. "Are we ever going to see you again?" For a moment, I considered the question. Then I answered honestly, "That depends." "On what?" I opened the door, and the cold night air rushed inside. "On whether you finally learn what family actually means." Then I stepped outside. Behind me was the house where I spent my childhood. Ahead of me was a future worth $3.8 billion. But the best part wasn't the money. It was something far more valuable: freedom, for the first time in my life. I wasn't the adopted kid at the wrong table. I was the man who finally chose his own seat.